This will be a reading of Harry's First Christmas, a Marauders Christmas story by G. Norman Lippert. I'm reading this from my sofa, and I have to be comfy when I read, so I am going to sit right here and cuddle up next to my little monkey, Georgie, and we are going to read. Here we go. Harry's First Christmas, a Marauders Christmas story by G. Norman Lippert. Dedicated to Tom Gray and supportstacy.net. And here's what the title page looks like. Now, this is printed on paper because it's fan fiction and free, but you want to listen to me read it because I'm going to have fun with it, and you will too. Here we go. You have to admit, the young man said, raising his chin approvingly and looking out over the busy street. The city is nice at the holidays. You can admit it all you want, the auburn-haired woman next to him sniffed, stepping over an oily puddle on the footpath. It won't make it true. Give me a Christmas in the Berkshire Hill Country any day. I'll never be able to feel festive about a styrofoam snowman impaled on a taxi antenna. The lights are nice, the man commented, unperturbed. And the sense of hustle and bustle. It's like we're at the North Pole and all the people around are Santa's elves. I've known too many elves to think that's very festive either, James. She pulled her wool hat down on her brow and shivered. And how can it be this cold without even snowing? The man smiled and bumped her playfully with his hip. Buck up, Lil. It's the first time we've been out of the house alone in months. It might not be an enchanted sleigh ride through a winter wonderland, but it's still Christmas. And somebody I know is going to absolutely adore what's in this sack here. The man held up a small white bag with the words Sugar Whims, Diagon Alley printed on it in dark red letters. The woman smiled a little crookedly and snatched the sack from his hands. He's too young to even know what footy pajamas are. All he'll know is that they'll keep his little toes warm at night. I wasn't talking about him, the man, James, replied quietly, putting his arm around the woman, Lily, and snuggling her close as they walked. She gave a small sigh and settled next to him. I adore him no matter what he wears, but the green will bring out his eyes, don't you think? James rolled his eyes theatrically. I thought so the last 3 times you asked, back in the shop. I haven't changed my mind yet, but I might if you ask me once more. It doesn't hurt you to indulge me, at least while we only have one. Wait until we have a house full. Like that family back in the sale corner at Sugar Whims, James replied archly. Don't even joke about such things. I've never seen so much red hair in my life, and I'm pretty sure one of those charming children tried to sneak a Zonko stink bomb into my coat pocket. Little blighter couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Oh, but did you see the twins? Now that really would be lovely, don't you think? Now you're just teasing me. Let's practice with one baby for a while, then we'll talk about having a baker's dozen. Fair enough? Lily didn't answer. She allowed the small sack to dangle at her side as she walked, her eyes pensive. James glanced aside at her. You're not still worried, are you? He asked in a low voice. Lily shook her head slightly, not exactly in negation, and shrugged. She sighed shallowly and said, How can I not be? James drew a deep breath as they stopped at a busy intersection. A grime-covered bus burred by, pulling a plume of exhaust behind it. James turned to look at his wife. You heard the headmaster, Lil. Even if this prophecy is real, we're perfectly safe. Like he said, if it ever becomes necessary, we can hide the house, choose a secret keeper, and lay low until the danger passes. If you can't trust old Dumbledore to know what he's talking about, well... Lily looked up into James's eyes, searching them, her brow furrowed slightly. After a moment, she looked away. Come on, she said, pulling him by the hand and stepping off the curb. They crossed the street and walked a while in silence. The Muggle crowd moved around them like a river around a rock, tense and scowling, lugging packages and hailing taxis. Lily looked up at the windows of the apartments over the busy street. She knew this area relatively well, despite her profession of distaste for the city. One of her best friends from school, Anastasia Troika, now lived in a third-floor walk-up on the opposite side of the street. Lily scanned the building and easily found the window of Stasia's flat. Colored light flickered behind the lace curtains. Muggle passers-by on the street would have assumed the lights were a telly, but Lily knew better. Stasia liked to decorate her Christmas tree with live Russian flickerbirds, their tiny flashing wings lighting the tree as they built their immaculate little nests in its branches. Lily had helped her erect just such a tree in the Gryffindor girls' dorm room during their 3rd year, until Dumbledore had suggested that the flickerbirds' colorful flashing wings and tinkling bird song were proving rather a nuisance to the girls attempting to sleep nearby. Lily had always suspected it had been Christiana Corsica who'd complained to Dumbledore, and not because the tiny birds were keeping her awake at night. Christiana was simply nasty and vain, and she tended to dislike anything that might be considered more beautiful than herself. This, at least, was Lily's strong conviction, if not an admitted fact. Strangely enough, Christiana now lived in a penthouse on the next corner, along with her creepy twin brother, Christophan. Neither of them worked, as far as the old school network of Lily's friends knew, but the Corsica family was wealthy, and everyone assumed that the penthouse was provided for the twins by their reclusive father. As she walked alongside James, Lily wondered how many other windows above belonged to wizarding families, or how many of the shops along the busy street were secretly run by witches and wizards. Diagon Alley and its secret surroundings were quite large, and yet Lily knew that many of the shops technically outside of the hidden magical district also kept secret back rooms and upstairs offices, catering to the thousands of magical folk who traveled through the area each day. The Diagon Alley runoff, her father had always affectionately called them. Some of the secret wizarding shops merely sold cheap magical cookery and trinkets, like the dreadful cuckoo clock James had gotten her last year, but some of them dealt in much darker services. For no reason, Lily thought again of the Corsicas and their mysterious penthouse. Was it possible that they were, in fact, engaged in some sort of business, using their conveniently located home as their meeting place? Lily shook her head, smiling a little crookedly. Just because you don't like her, she thought to herself, doesn't give you an excuse to imagine her as the spearhead of some dark conspiracy. She decided not even to mention her musings to James. He had outright hated Christiana's Hufflepuff brother, Christophan, and would probably have the poor twit mentally convicted and sentenced to Azkaban before they even got back to their front door in Godric's Hollow. As the two of them approached the next corner, a rather thin, unhappy-looking Santa was ringing a bell and extolling anyone who'd listen about the breathtaking deals to be had in the shop behind him. As James and Lily passed him, James hooked Lily's elbow and pulled her sharply around the corner, heading into a narrow side street. "Where are we going?" Lily asked, frowning at her husband. "I don't mean to cause you alarm, love, so let's just walk a bit faster and keep a sharp eye out." "What on earth are you talking about?" "I can't know for sure, but I've been a sneak long enough to recognize sneaking. I think someone is following us."